Good day, children. Welcome to a new lesson in math. Today we are talking about equivalent fractions and mixed numbers. So we're getting into fractions, everyone's favorite part of math. I'm just kidding. I know that a lot of us have a hard time with fractions, so I want us to be able to feel really confident in what we're doing and how we're doing it, that we can take this all year and be working through fractions. So equivalent fractions and mixed numbers. We're going to start talking about equivalent fractions, and then we'll get into mixed numbers at the end of our day. So equivalent fractions, if you look at the word equivalent, it starts with the same letters as the word equal. So equivalent fractions are just another way to say equal fractions. So equivalent fractions, I'm going to put the official definition here. Equivalent fractions they are different fractions that have the same value. So different fractions, but they have the same value. So let's say I had, I got a lot of things here. Just a second. Let's say I had a pie. Okay, let's say I had a pie. All right. And I want to eat 1/2 of this pie. So what I would do, it would make sense, I would take this pie, I would cut it in half, and I would eat 1/2 of this pie. Okay? So there we go. I've eaten 1/2 of the pie. But what if this same pie, let's see if I can do this here. What if the same pie, instead of 1/2, let's say I cut it into 4ths. So I had a fraction of 4ths, but I still want to eat the same amount of pie. Well, I'm still going to color in 1/2 of this circle here, but now I've colored in 2 of the 4 sections. That is an equivalent fraction. Or let's say I have this pie here, and it got somehow cut into 8 pieces. Now I have 8 pieces here. So I have a fraction with 8 as the bottom or denominator. And I want to eat the same amount. I want to eat 1/2 of this pie. And I'm going to eat 1, 2, 3, 4 of the pieces gives me 1/2 of my pie here. All of these fractions are telling me the same value. It's telling me 1/2 of the circle, right? This is a circle, and it's 1/2 of the circle. This is a circle, and it's 1/2 of the circle. This is a circle, and this is all 1/2 of the circle. All of these fractions are the same. They're equivalent fractions. And so when we have a fraction, when we're dealing with a fraction, let's say we're dealing with the fraction 4, let's not do 4/5. We'll do 4/10. And I say, hey, I want a fraction that is equal to 4/10. Well, the way that we can figure out how to make a fraction equal to another fraction, or how we can change a fraction to find an equal fraction, is we can either, I'll write this out twice because there's 2 ways we can do it. We can either use multiplication. We can use multiplication, or we can use division. Okay, and so when we multiply, if we wanted to multiply this fraction, let's say we wanted to multiply our denominator by 2. And we know 10 times 2 is 20. So I'm going to have another fraction with a denominator of 20. Now, when I'm dealing with fractions, I need to make sure that whatever I do to my bottom number, I do the same thing to my top number. So if I multiply my bottom number by 2, I multiply my top number by 2. There's a reason behind this, and quickly, this is, if you want to know, great. If not, then zone me out for a second. But when I multiply by 2 over 2, the fraction 2 over 2 equals 1. And we know that when we multiply something by 1, it doesn't actually change anything we're doing. Okay, there's my brief background on this. But if I multiply my bottom number, my denominator, by 2, I need to multiply my top number, or my numerator, by 2 as well. 4 times 2 is 8. So 4/10 is the same thing as 8/20. 8/20 equals 4/10. Those are the same fraction. So multiplying, I can multiply to get an equivalent fraction. I can also divide, and same kind of, oh, whoops, that didn't do what I wanted it to do. I can divide, and same thing, I can take both of my numbers here, and I can figure out, all right, as long as I can divide my numerator and my denominator by the same thing, I can also find an equivalent fraction. So I can find an equivalent fraction as long as my numerator and denominator can be multiplied by the same, or divided by the same thing. And so is there a number that 4 and 10 can both be divided by? Yes, they can both be divided by 2. And so we're going to divide the top number, or the numerator, by 2, and the denominator by 2. We're going to get 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 2/5 also equals 4/10, which equals 8/20. And all three of these fractions are equivalent. Okay, all of these fractions here are equivalent. All right, so that is a brief introduction to equivalent fractions. Now, we also want to talk about how to simplify. We're going to talk about how to simplify our fractions. So we have a fraction like 24/36. Okay, we want to think about what number, so to simplify means to make into the smallest version of itself. So we want to make this into the smallest version of itself. So we're going to do that by saying, all right, what number can 24 and 36 both be divided by? What's a number that 24 and 36 can both be divided by? 4 is an option. Let's say they can both be divided by 4. They can. So we're going to divide our top number by 4 and our bottom number by 4. We're going to get 24 divided by 4 equals 6, and 36 divided by 4 equals 9, 6/9. Now, is that in simplest form, or can 6/9 be simplified again? 6/9 can be simplified again. Both 6 and 9 can be divided by the same thing. They can both be divided by 3. They can both be divided by 3, and so we're going to solve that out and see what we get. 6 divided by 3 equals 2. 9 divided by 3 equals 3, and we get 2/3, which is in simplest form. 2 and 3 cannot both be divided by the same thing, so that would be simplest form. We're dividing by simplifying fractions. We want to just keep dividing the numerator and denominator by the same thing until we get to our smallest numbers. All right, so there is simplifying. Now, let's talk about mixed numbers. So we have mixed numbers, improper fractions, and mixed numbers. So an improper fraction would be, this is a fraction with a larger numerator. So it's improper if the numerator is bigger, something like 8 over 5. That's an example of an improper fraction. We normally want our numerator to be the smaller number. It is improper if our numerator is larger. And we also have mixed numbers. Which are a value that contains both a whole number and a fraction, something like 1 3/5. This would be an example of a mixed number because it contains a whole number right here and a fraction. Whole number and a fraction are both contained in this, and so this is an example of a mixed number. Now, these two values here, these can go back and forth. We can convert from one to the other, and we should know how to convert from one to the other. It's clearer to write numbers as mixed numbers, but to do a lot of our mathematical operations, we're not going to do those today, but we'll do those next chapter probably. And we're going to want to be able to take our mixed numbers and turn them improper. It's easier to work with improper fractions mathematically, but it makes more sense to read them and to deal with them as a mixed number. So let's talk about how to convert a mixed or an improper. We're going to start with improper to mixed. Okay, so if we have a value like 21/4. So here's a quick thing about fractions. Fractions, write it over here. Fractions are division. Fractions are division. Think about a division symbol. That looks really similar to a fraction, if you asked me. A fraction with a line and then two values on top and bottom. Division symbol is just a fraction, right? So when we deal with fractions, all that is dividing. So we're going to come over here and we're going to say, all right, well, 21/4, that's actually the same thing as saying 21 divided by 4. And so we want to say, how many times can 4 go into 21? And we get 5 times with a remainder of 1. And so what this means, our 5 here, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to color code it here. We're going to have 5 times with a remainder of 1. And so the way we write all of this information is we have our fraction. We put our whole number. This number becomes our whole number. Our remainder becomes our numerator. And the number that was the denominator stays the same as our denominator. Okay, so it's a lot of steps. But so we divide our fraction. So we divide 21 divided by 4. And we get 5 with a remainder of 1. That 5 is our whole number in the mixed number. The remainder is our numerator, and the denominator is the number that was the denominator from the beginning. We keep our denominator the same. So go ahead on this one, try and solve this, try and convert this improper fraction. We'll say we have 19 over 5. So convert 19 over 5 to a mixed number. All right, and so if you did the math and you did, all right, well, 19 divided by 5 is 3 with a remainder 4. So that gives me a whole number of 3, remainder of 4 for my numerator, and my denominator stays the same. 3 4/5 would be the right answer to this problem. Great job, children. All right, so that is improper to a mixed number. But what if I have a mixed number and I want to make that improper? Mixed to improper. Let's say I have something like 14 over 3. Whoops, I gave you the answer there. Read that question wrong. My bad. Let's say I have something like 9 2/3. There we go. Let's do 9 2/3. Let's say that's my mixed number, and I want to make this improper. So there's a math problem I do to make this improper. I'm going to show you what the math problem looks like, and that'll help you know what to do. So our denominator stays the same. So in this case, our answer will be a denominator of 3. Our numerator is where we get our math problem. And we do denominator times whole number plus numerator. Okay, so this is denominator, numerator, whole number. So we do our denominator times our whole number and add that to our numerator, and that gives us our new numerator over here. So we're going to say, all right, well, this formula gives me denominator's 3 times whole number's 9 plus my numerator is 2. So 3 times 9, 27, plus 2 equals 29. And this becomes my new numerator. If I were you, I would probably want to write this equation down right here so that we know how to find our new numerator. Denominator times whole number, and then add that to your numerator. I know it uses letters, but I tried to make the letters just be exactly what they were supposed to be. D for denominator, W for whole number, and N for numerator. All right, so knowing what we know, let's convert 6 1/5 to an improper. All right, that is your exit task for this video. Go ahead and convert this fraction for me. I will see you all in class. Come prepared with questions or answer questions here. Let me know how we're feeling. Best of luck to you. Goodbye, children.